Hello students, welcome back to Accountancy class. I am Shweta J from Commerce Department, Gopal Swami PU College, Mysuru. In last class, we have solved problem based on balance sheet. In today's session also, let's solve two more problems based on balance sheet because it is very important from your examination point of view. Now let's get started. Here is your example problem. From the following trial balance, prepare balance sheet of Star Limited for the year ending 31st March 2018 as per Schedule 3 of Companies Act 2013. Equity share capital 2 lakh, preference share capital 3 lakh, reserves and surplus 3 lakh, sales 5 lakh, other non-current liabilities 2 lakh, tangible assets 4 lakh, intangible assets 2 lakh 50,000, salaries 90,000, printing and stationery 30,000, rent 80,000, purchases 3 lakh, trade receivables 3 lakh 50,000 and the total amount of trial balance is 15 lakh. So in your present problem, they have given the problem in the format of trial balance. Because of the trial balance format, this problem involves both the items relating to the profit and loss statement as well as the items relating to the balance sheet. So now we are going to prepare balance sheet. So for this purpose, we must consider only the items relating to the balance sheet. And you have to ignore the items which are relating to the profit and loss statement. ಟ್ರಯಲ್ ಬ್ಯಾಲೆನ್ಸ್ ಫಾರ್ಮ್ಯಾಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಈ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಅನ್ನ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿರೋದ್ರಿಂದ ಆಸ್ ಯೂಶುವಲ್ ಪ್ರಾಫಿಟ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಲಾಸ್ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಗೆ ರಿಲೇಟೆಡ್ ಆಗಿರೋ ಐಟಮ್ಸ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, ಬ್ಯಾಲೆನ್ಸ್ ಶೀಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ರೆಕಾರ್ಡ್ ಮಾಡುವಂತ ಐಟಮ್ಸ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ನಾವು ಬ್ಯಾಲೆನ್ಸ್ ಶೀಟ್ ಅನ್ನ ಪ್ರಿಪೇರ್ ಮಾಡೋದ್ರಿಂದ ಬ್ಯಾಲೆನ್ಸ್ ಶೀಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾವ್ದೆಲ್ಲ ಐಟಮ್ಸ್ ಅನ್ನ ರೆಕಾರ್ಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕಂತಿರ್ತೀವೋ ಆ ಎಲ್ಲ ಐಟಮ್ಸ್ ಅನ್ನ ಮಾತ್ರ ನೀವು ಕನ್ಸಿಡರ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಹೋಗ್ತೀರಾ. ಹಾಗೇನೆ ಪ್ರಾಫಿಟ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಲಾಸ್ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಗೆ ರಿಲೇಟೆಡ್ ಆಗಿರೋ ಐಟಮ್ಸ್ ಏನೆಲ್ಲ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿರ್ತಾರೆ ಅದನ್ನ ಇಗ್ನೋರ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಹೋಗ್ತೀರಾ. ಸೊ ದಟ್ is sales, salaries, printing and stationery, rent, purchases. You should not consider these items while preparing balance sheet. So as usual, while solving this problem, you have to follow 3 steps. What are they? The first one is you have to classify the following items into shareholders fund, non-current liability, current liability, non-current assets and current assets. The second step is you have to write the format correctly. And the third step, if there is more than one item relating to the particular major head, then you have to prepare separate working note. If you know these 3 steps, then you can easily solve the problem. Now let's classify them into major heads which are recorded in the balance sheet. The first one is equity share capital shareholders fund, preference share capital shareholders fund, reserves and surplus which are come under shareholders fund. Sales should be ignored. The next, other non-current liabilities which is recorded under the non-current liabilities separately. The next, tangible assets. As you all know, fixed assets can be divided into 2, tangible assets and intangible assets. Here in your present problem, they have given directly the amount of tangible assets and the intangible assets. So these 2 items recorded under the non-current assets or fixed assets. Next, salary should be ignored, printing and stationery ignored, rent ignored, purchases ignored. Why it is ignored? Because you are not supposed to record these items in the balance sheet because it is related to the profit and loss statement. The next is trade receivables. It is recorded under the current assets. So now the first step is completed. Now the second step is write the format of balance sheet correctly. Now let's write the format of balance sheet. So this is the format of balance sheet as per Schedule 3 of the Companies Act 2013. First column particulars, second column note number and the third column is amount. So as we know, equity and liability can be divided into 3 major heads. The first one is shareholders fund, non-current liability and current liability. Again, shareholders fund contains 2 items, that is share capital and reserves and surplus. The next, non-current liability. So this non-current liability also involves 2 items. The first one is long-term borrowings and other non-current liabilities. Next, current liability. There are 4 current liabilities. The first one is short term borrowings, trade payables, other current liabilities, and short term provisions. When you add all these items, you will get total equity and liability of the company. Next, coming to the assets. Assets can be divided into two. One is non-current assets and the second one is current assets. Non-current assets involves three major non-current assets involves three items. The first one is fixed assets. Fixed assets again can be divided into two, tangible assets and another one is intangible assets, non-current investment and other non-current assets. Next, coming to the current assets, there are six current assets. The first one is current investment, inventories, trade receivables, other current assets, cash and cash equivalents, short-term loans and advances. So when you add all these items, you will get total assets. So now the second step is also completed. First step alli ನಾವು classify ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು ಕೊಟ್ಟಿರ್ತಾರೆ ಐಟಮ್ಸ್ ಯಾವುದಕ್ಕೆ ಬರುತ್ತೆ, ಲೈಕ್ ಶೇರ್ ಹೋಲ್ಡರ್ಸ್ ಫಂಡ್ ಯಾವುದು, ಅಸೆಟ್ಸ್ ಯಾವುದು, ಟ್ಯಾಂಜಿಬಲ್ ಅಸೆಟ್ಸ್ ಯಾವುದು, ನಾನ್ ಕರೆಂಟ್ ಇನ್ವೆಸ್ಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಯಾವುದು, ಲಾಂಗ್ ಟರ್ಮ್ ಬಾರೋಯಿಂಗ್ಸ್ ಯಾವುದು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ಕ್ಲಾಸಿಫೈ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ತೀವಿ. ಸೆಕೆಂಡ್ ಸ್ಟೆಪ್ ಬಂದು ನಾವು ಫಾರ್ಮ್ಯಾಟ್ ಅನ್ನ ಕಂಪ್ಲೀಟ್ ಆಗಿ ಬರಿತಾ ಹೋಗ್ತೀವಿ. ಆ ಫಾರ್ಮ್ಯಾಟ್ ಬರೆದ ಆದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಅನ್ನ ನೋಡಿಕೊಂಡು ಆ ಫಾರ್ಮ್ಯಾಟ್ಗೆ ನಾವು ಜಸ್ಟ್ ಅದನ್ನ ಕಾಪಿ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಹೋಗ್ತೀವಿ ಅಥವಾ ಆ ಫಾರ್ಮ್ಯಾಟ್ ಅನ್ನ ಫಿಲ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಹೋಗ್ತೀವಿ. ಸೊ ನಾವು ಲೆಟ್ಸ್ ಗೆಟ್ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟೆಡ್. ಸೊ ದ first one is equity share capital and the second one is preference share capital. So as you all know, if there is more than one item relating to the particular head given in the problem, then we have to prepare separate working note. So now we have to prepare a separate working note in order to find out the total share capital of the company. So make heading as notes to accounts. First column note number, second column particulars and the third column is amount. So what is the first note? Share capital. So share capital ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಎರಡು ಐಟಮ್ ಅನ್ನ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ, ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಈಕ್ವಿಟಿ ಶೇರ್ ಕ್ಯಾಪಿಟಲ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಪ್ರಿಫರೆನ್ಸ್ ಶೇರ್ ಕ್ಯಾಪಿಟಲ್. ಸೊ ಈಕ್ವಿಟಿ ಶೇರ್ ಕ್ಯಾಪಿಟಲ್ ಒಂದೇ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದಾಗ ಡೈರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿ ನಾವು ಇಲ್ಲೇ ಫಾರ್ಮ್ಯಾಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಫಿಲ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಹೋಗ್ಬೋದಿತ್ತು, ಬಟ್ ಎರಡು ಡಿಫ್ರೆಂಟ್ ಕ್ಯಾಪಿಟಲ್ ಅಮೌಂಟ್ ಅನ್ನ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ವಿ ನೀಡ್ ಟು ಫೈಂಡ್ ಔಟ್ ಟೋಟಲ್ ಅಮೌಂಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಶೇರ್ ಕ್ಯಾಪಿಟಲ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಕಂಪನಿ. ಕಂಪನಿಯ ಟೋಟಲ್ ಶೇರ್ ಕ್ಯಾಪಿಟಲ್ ಎಷ್ಟು ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನ ಫೈಂಡ್ ಔಟ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ನಾವು ಸೆಪರೇಟ್ ವರ್ಕಿಂಗ್ ನೋಟ್ ಅನ್ನ ಪ್ರಿಪೇರ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದೀವಿ. ಸೊ ಈಕ್ವಿಟಿ ಶೇರ್ ಕ್ಯಾಪಿಟಲ್. ಸೊ ವಾಟ್ ಇಸ್ ದ ಅಮೌಂಟ್ ಆಫ್ equity share capital? 2 lakh. Next, preference share capital 3 lakh. So now the total amount of share capital of the company is 5 lakh. So now recorded in the statement as note number 1, 5 lakh. Next, reserves and surplus, and this item directly given in your problem. The amount of reserves and surplus is rupees 3 lakh. No need to prepare separate working note because they have directly given in the problem as reserves and surplus rupees 3 lakh. So reserves and surplus amount ಅನ್ನ ಡೈರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿರೋದ್ರಿಂದ ನೀವು ಡೈರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಜಸ್ಟ್ ನೀವು ಫಾರ್ಮ್ಯಾಟ್ ಗೆ ಕಾಪಿ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಹೋಗಬಹುದು. Next, coming to the non current liability. So under that long term borrowings, in your present problem there is no long term borrowings, leave it as blank. The next, other non current liabilities, is there is other non current liabilities of rupees 2 lakh. 2 lakh ಡೈರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಸೊ ಫಾರ್ಮ್ಯಾಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಡೈರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿ ಕಾಪಿ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಹೋಗಿ. ನಾವು ಕಮಿಂಗ್ ಟು ದಿ ಕರೆಂಟ್ ಲಯಬಿಲಿಟಿ, ಶಾರ್ಟ್ ಟರ್ಮ್ ಬೋರೋಯಿಂಗ್ಸ್, ದೇರ್ ಇಸ್ ನೋ ಶಾರ್ಟ್ ಟರ್ಮ್ ಬೋರೋಯಿಂಗ್ಸ್, ಲೀವ್ ಇಟ್ ಆಸ್ ಬ್ಲಾಂಕ್. ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್, ಟ್ರೇಡ್ ಪೇಬಲ್ಸ್, ದೇರ್ ಇಸ್ ನೋ ಟ್ರೇಡ್ ಪೇಬಲ್ಸ್, ಲೀವ್ ಇಟ್ ಆಸ್ ಬ್ಲಾಂಕ್. Other current liabilities, there is no other current liabilities, leave it as blank. Short term provision, this is also not given in your problem, leave it as blank. So now you have to make a total of all the liabilities together, 5 lakh plus 3 lakh plus 2 lakh. So comes to 10 lakh. So now the total amount of equity and liability of the company is rupees 10 lakh. Now coming to the assets. Non-current assets, under that fixed assets, and the fixed assets can be divided into two, tangible assets and intangible assets. In your present problem they have given the amount of tangible assets and intangible assets. You can directly record it in the statement. What is the amount of a tangible asset? 4 lakh. Next, intangible assets 2,50,000. Next, non-current investment, there is no non-current investment, leave it as blank. Next, other non-current assets. There is no other non-current assets. Leave it as blank. Next, current investment. There is no current investment. Leave it as blank. There is no inventories. Leave it as blank. Trade receivables. Yes, there is a trade receivables in your problem. The amount of trade receivables is rupees 3,50,000. Next, other current assets. There is no other current assets. Leave it as blank. Cash and cash equivalents. There is no cash and cash equivalents. As usual, leave it as blank. There is no short-term loans and advances. Leave it as blank. So after recording all the assets, next you have to add all together. You will get 10 lakh. 4 lakh plus 2 lakh 50,000 plus 3 lakh 50,000 comes to 10 lakh. One thing you should keep in your mind is you should buy the format of balance sheet correctly. Then only you can easily solve the problem. Correct agi, complete agi balance sheet format anna ಬಾಹೆಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಹೋಗಿ ಈಸಿ ಆಗಿ ನಾವು ಇವಾಗ ಹೇಗೆ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಅನ್ನ ಸಾಲ್ವ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ವಿ ಜಸ್ಟ್ ಕಾಪಿ ಪೇಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಹೋಗಿದ್ವಿ ಹಾಗೆ ನೀವು ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಅನ್ನ ಸಾಲ್ವ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಹೋಗಬಹುದು. This can be possible only when you ಬಾಹೆಟ್ the format of balance sheet correctly. Now let's solve another problem. Here is your example problem. You are required to prepare the balance sheet from the following information as per the provision of the Companies Act 2013 in Schedule 3. Equity share capital 9 lakh, general reserve 30,000, balance in statement of profit and loss 26,000, preliminary expenses 2 lakh 40,000, discount on issue of shares 20,000, goodwill 30,000, 10% debentures 2 lakh, stock in trade 1 lakh 40,000, loose tools 12,000, bills receivable 1 lakh 20,000, cash at bank 1 lakh 35,000, motor vehicles 4 lakh 75,000 and provision for taxation rupees 16,000. So as we know, in order to solve this problem we have to follow 3 steps. The first step is to classify the following items into major heads which are recorded in the balance sheet. Equity share capital, shareholders fund, general reserve, reserves and surplus, balance in statement of profit and loss come under reserves and surplus, preliminary expenses, other non-current assets, discount on issue of shares, other current assets, goodwill, intangible assets, 10% debenture, long-term borrowings which are come under non-current liabilities, stock in trade, inventories. Stock in trade is also considered as inventories which are come under current assets. Loose tools, it is also considered as inventories. You have to add this to the inventories which is come under current assets. Next is bills receivable. Bills receivable is also called as trade receivables which is come under current assets. Cash at bank is also considered as cash and cash equivalents which is come under current assets. Motor vehicles, tangible assets. Next, provision for taxation, it is considered as short term provisions which is come under current liabilities. Now the first step is completed and the second step is to write the format of balance sheet correctly. Already I have written the format of balance sheet on the board. Balance sheet as at 31st March 2018 as per Schedule 3 of the Companies Act 2013, particulars, note number, amount. As we know, the equity and liability of the company can be divided into 3: shareholders fund, non-current liability and current liabilities, whereas assets can be divided into 2: non-current assets and current assets. So now let's solve the problem. The first item given in your problem is equity share capital of rupees 9 lakh. So it is recorded in the statement in share capital as rupees 9 lakh. Share capital, equity share capital of the company is rupees 9 lakh. Now coming to the reserves and surplus. So in your present problem, there are 2 items which are related to the reserves and surplus are given. So we have to show them in a separate working note. Note number 1, reserves and surplus. Under that, general reserve. So what is the amount of general reserve? That is rupees 30,000. The next, balance in statement of profit and loss. ಸೊ ಬ್ಯಾಲೆನ್ಸ್ ಇನ್ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಪ್ರಾಫಿಟ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಲಾಸ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದಾಗ ನೀವು ಅದನ್ನ ರಿಸರ್ವ್ಸ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಸರ್ಪ್ಲಸ್ ಅಂಡರ್ ಅಲ್ಲೇ ತಗೊಳ್ಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ವಾಟ್ ಇಸ್ ದ ಅಮೌಂಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಬ್ಯಾಲೆನ್ಸ್ ಇನ್ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಪ್ರಾಫಿಟ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಲಾಸ್? ದಟ್ ಇಸ್ rupees 26,000. So now the total amount of reserves and surplus is rupees 56,000. So now recorded in the statement as note number 1, 56,000. Next, coming to the non-current liabilities. So under that, long-term borrowings. So long-term borrowings, that is 10% debenture. As usual, it is also recorded in the working note. Note number 2, long-term borrowings, 10% debentures. What is the amount of 10% debentures? That is rupees 2 lakh. So now recorded in the statement as note number 2, 2 lakh. Next, other non-current liabilities. There is no other non-current liabilities, leave it as blank. And next, coming to the current liabilities. So under that, short-term borrowings, there is no short-term borrowings, leave it as blank. Next, trade payables, there is no trade payables, leave it as blank. Next, other current liabilities, there is no other current liabilities, leave it as blank. Next, short-term provision. Yes, there is a short-term provision, that is a provision for taxation. It is recorded in this working note. Short-term provision, provision for taxation. So what is the amount of provision for taxation? That is rupees 16,000. Now recorded in the statement as note number 3, 16,000. After recording all the liabilities of the company, then add all the liabilities together, you will get 11,72,000. ಲಯಬಿಲಿಟೀಸ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ರೆಕಾರ್ಡ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಟೋಟಲ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಆಗ ನಿಮಗೆ 11,72,000 ಅಮೌಂಟ್ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಕಮಿಂಗ್ ಟು ದಿ ಅಸೆಟ್ಸ್. ಆಸ್ ಯು ಆಲ್ ನೋ, ಅಸೆಟ್ಸ್ ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಬಿ ಡಿವೈಡೆಡ್ ಇಂಟು ಟು ನಾನ್ ಕರೆಂಟ್ ಅಸೆಟ್ಸ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಕರೆಂಟ್ ಅಸೆಟ್ಸ್. ದ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಒನ್ is fixed assets. So here they have given motor vehicles. So we have to show it in a separate working note. Note number 4, tangible asset, motor vehicle. So what is the amount of motor vehicle? So what is the amount of motor vehicles? That is rupees 4,75,000. So now recorded in the statement as 4 lakh. Note number 4, 4,75,000. Next, coming to the intangible assets, there is a intangible asset. Show it in a separate working note. Intangible asset. So under that, goodwill, 30,000. Now recorded directly in the statement as note number 5, 30,000. Next, coming to the non-current investment, there is no non-current investment, leave it as blank. Next, other non-current assets. So there is other non-current assets. Show it in a separate working note. Make heading as other non-current assets. Under that, you should record the preliminary expenses. So what is the amount of preliminary expenses? So that is rupees 2,40,000. Note number 6, other non-current assets, 2,40,000. Next, coming to the current assets, under that current investment, there is no current investment, leave it as blank. Next, inventories. So it should be recorded in a separate working note. Inventories, stock in trade. Under that, you should write the stock in trade. What is the amount of stock in trade? 1,40,000. Next, loose tools. Loose tools also recorded under the inventories, rupees 12,000. Now the total amount of inventories is rupees 1,52,000. Now recorded in the statement directly as note number 7, 1,52,000. Next, trade receivables. So as I said in the beginning, trade receivables and bills receivables both are same. Recorded directly in the statement. What is the amount of bills receivable? 1,20,000. And there is other current assets recorded in the separate working note. Note number 8. Make a heading as other current assets. So under that, you should write the discount on issue of share. So what is the amount of discount on issue of shares? That is rupees 20,000. So now recorded in the statement as note number 8, 20,000. The next, cash at bank, that is rupees 1,35,000. Cash at bank and cash equivalents both are same, recorded directly in the statement as 1,35,000. Next, short term loans and advances, there is no short term loans and advances, leave it as blank. Next, so after recording all the assets, you have to make a total of all the assets one by one. 4,75,000 plus 30,000 plus 2,40,000 plus 1,52,000 plus 1,20,000 plus 20,000 plus 1,35,000 comes to 11,72,000. ಅಸೆಟ್ಸ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ರೆಕಾರ್ಡ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಟೋಟಲ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಆಗ ನಿಮಗೆ 11,72,000 ಟೋಟಲ್ ಅಮೌಂಟ್ ಸಿಗುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಏನ್ ಟೋಟಲ್ ಬರುತ್ತೆ ನಿಮಗೆ ಅಸೆಟ್ಸ್ ಟೋಟಲ್, that must be equal to the total of liabilities. So liabilities total ಮಾಡಿದಾಗ ಏನ್ ಬ್ಯಾಲೆನ್ಸ್ ಬರುತ್ತೋ ಅಸೆಟ್ಸ್ ಟೋಟಲ್ ಮಾಡಿದಾಗ್ಲೂ ಅದೇ ಬ್ಯಾಲೆನ್ಸ್ ನಿಮಗೆ ಬರಬೇಕು. then only your problems will be correct. So this is how we prepare balance sheet, and I repeat, you must behead the format of balance sheet correctly, then only you can easily solve the problem. Apart from that, you can easily score 6 mark in your examination. And now I conclude this chapter. So I hope you have understood today's session. Thank you.